These pillars dates back 11,600 years. It appears to be purposely buried at the same time of the younger destination. Climate catastrophe. This is fascinating. In southeastern Turkey lies Gobecée, a 12,000-year-old monument, older than Stonehenge and the pyramids. From afar, they look just like any regular archaeological find. But up close, you'll see that carved into its massive stone pillars are intricate animal figures, celestial symbols, and human forms that have puzzled archaeologists for decades. Why, you wonder? Well, it's because these structures are an archaeological wonder. But what makes them even more remarkable is the coded message believed they hold, a message that has remained undecoded until now. With the creation of a quantum AI trained to decode symbolic systems across cultures and time, we've come closer than ever to finding the life-altering meaning behind these carvings. What do the carvings mean? Who built them? Why were they built, and what warnings might they hold for us? Today, let's find out. Discovery of a forgotten civilization. Before we jump right into everything AI has to say about Göbekli and what it means for the future of mankind, and let's explore the mystery of this ancient structure and how it came to be. Sitting atop a hill in southeastern Turkey is Göbekli Tepe, an archaeological breakthrough that changed the way we perceive early human societies forever, although there isn't an exact date to go by. Radiocarbon dating places goes construction between 9,600 and 8,200 BCE, making it older than Stonehenge and the Great Pyramid by millennia. It was first uncovered in the 1990s by German archaeologist Klaus Schmidt and his team. German archaeologist Klaus Schmidt visited the site and began digging. Propelled by the potential discovery of a monumental structure, Klaus and his team soon began excavations, and what they discovered would change the way we perceive the early humans forever. The excavations led the researchers to several massive circular enclosures, each defined by towering T-shaped limestone pillars weighing up to 20 tons, and what was even more fascinating, these structures were built by hunter-gatherers in a time when technology is believed to have been non-existent. It just didn't make sense. How could such a structure exist in a period before simpler things like agriculture, pottery, or even writing? We'll get into some of the theories later in the video, but if there's one undeniable thing, it's that the complexity of these structures implied a collective effort, planning, and social coordination far beyond hunter-gatherer norms. Instead of domestic remnants, roof supports, hearths, trash pits, or tools, Gobecée surprisingly shows only open-air enclosures, animal carvings, and ritual paraphernalia. No evidence of farming or settlement activity was discovered. To many, this reinforced the theory that it served primarily as a ceremonial or ritual site. But let's shift our focus to the pillars, because while the structure in itself is already pretty impressive, is what's written on it that holds all the answers. The pillars richly decorated with deeply carved images, scorpions, vultures, foxes, snakes, wild boars, and abstract forms completely stunned archaeologists. For decades, they wondered and even debated their meaning. Were they toemic markers, seasonal records, mythological stories, or were they just the carvings of a people who loved art? No one could answer these questions, and the absence of a written script from that period made things much harder to figure out. One of the most debated motifs appears on the vulture stone, where a vulture hovers above a headless human figure, which some researchers believe was likely a symbolic message rather than entertainment. Still, no one could answer the pressing questions of the meanings behind these sculptures. But times have changed with the creation of advanced artificial intelligence, and now the cutting-edge field of quantum AI. Researchers finally have a tool powerful enough to tackle an age-old mystery. Why quantum AI? Unlike traditional AI, quantum AI can process unimaginable amounts of data simultaneously, spotting patterns hidden in chaos. Its analysis brought precision, the ability to scan each carving in microscopic detail, map its spatial relationship to every other symbol, and cross-reference those findings against vast cultural and astronomical databases. And the results, they were unexpected. The carvings seem to follow a deliberate sequence, forming What may be the earliest form of symbolic writing known to humanity? According to the AI, the scorpion represents death, the vulture embodies celestial ascent, the sun disk symbolizes divine power or enlightenment, and the headless man reflects a transformative passage where to, we're not exactly certain, but it's possibly into another realm. Now, when you place all of these together, when you combine them, they form a narrative of death, rebirth, and cosmic cycles. Mind-blowing, isn't it? Even more intriguingly, the AI detected alignments between certain pillars and celestial markers such as the position of specific constellations at sunrise on key dates more than 12,000 years ago. These alignments suggest that Göbekli builders were not only skilled artisans, but also keen astronomers tracking the precession of the equinoxes, the slow wobble of Earth's axis with extraordinary accuracy. This precession completes one full cycle roughly every 25,920 years. And what's terrifying, the AI concluded that the carvings may encode a warning related to this cycle, possibly linked to catastrophic events in the distant past. If this is true, it changes everything. Also, well, if the hunter-gatherers in the early Neolithic were aware of such astronomical phenomena, it challenges the linear model of human progress that assumes complex science emerged only with agriculture and urbanization. What quantum AI suggests is that the people of Göbekli might have been heirs to an even older tradition, survivors of a lost civilization attempting to preserve essential knowledge before it vanished completely. Even more interestingly, one of the strangest things the AI noticed wasn't in the carvings themselves, but in the order they appeared. The deeper the excavation goes, the older the stones, the more precise and refined the work becomes. Edges are sharper, proportions more balanced, and the animal reliefs seem almost alive. Strangely, the newer layers above them look less impressive. The lines are rougher. The figures lose detail. It's as if the people who came later had inherited the blueprint, but not the skill. That's the opposite of what we expect. Our history books tell a story of constant improvement. Tools get better, techniques get sharper, civilizations grow stronger. But here, it looks like the builders started at their peak and worked downhill. If that's true, Gobecée isn't just a record of a rising culture. It might be the fading echo of a lost one. Gobecée is not simply a temple. It is a marker of a species on the cusp of change. And if the first builders were preserving knowledge they already knew, they were losing, then every stone here isn't just a monument, but a time capsule. Finally, there's the mystery of the site's burial. Around 8000 BCE, Tebek was deliberately covered with tons of earth and debris, effectively preserving it for millennia. Although traditional interpretations have called this a ritual closure, the quantum AI raises another possibility. Perhaps it was hidden intentionally to safeguard its encoded messages for a future time, maybe even for us. If so, what is this message and how much of it has AI been able to decode? Decoding the symbols of Göbekli. We've already established that the carved pillars of Göbekli are not random decorations, but an intentional, structured language. Using quantum-based pattern recognition, researchers found that the sequence of carvings follows a deliberate narrative order. The scorpion, vulture, sun disk, and headless man appear together in a way that suggests a symbolic story of death, celestial ascent, and rebirth. And while this arrangement might seem simply artistic, it's not. So what then is it? Well, according to AI, it's a code. The AI compared these carvings to known iconographic systems from later civilizations like Sumerian cylinder seals, Egyptian tomb art, and Neolithic Chinese jade engravings. Across thousands of miles and millennia, striking similarities emerged not only in the symbols themselves, but in their arrangement and meaning. This suggests that the builders of Gobecée were preserving a pre-civilizational symbolic code that survived a major cataclysm. But here's why this new angle might be controversial. Such a claim challenges long-held archaeological assumptions. Mainstream theory places the origin of written communication with the Sumerians around 3200 BCE. But Göbekli's carvings date to around 10,000 BCE CE. That's nearly 7,000 years earlier. This means that if these symbols indeed form a protocrypt, they could represent the world's earliest known writing system. But that's not all. The AI analysis also revealed a remarkable level of astronomical knowledge encoded within the carvings. For example, the vulture and scorpion, to an extent, correspond to the constellations Sagittarius and Scorpius. There is the scorpion. There is also something that resembles a swan. The placement of these symbols matches the night sky of a specific prehistoric era, hinting that the monument functioned as both a ceremonial and celestial observatory. One of the most intriguing aspects of this analysis is that the spatial relationships between the pillars appear to encode measurements tied to quantum oscillation patterns, something no hunter-gatherer society is believed to have understood. If accurate, this would imply the survival of knowledge from an advanced culture predating the known rise of civilization. Still on the vulture stone, officially labeled Pillar 43, there's also a carving that seems almost playful at first glance. 3 small rectangular shapes with half-moon handles neatly lined up like designer handbags on display. Unsurprisingly, it captured the world's attention. Archaeologists have cataloged them without fanfare, offering modest theories. Perhaps they are baskets for carrying offerings, containers for seeds, or abstract depictions of temple roofs. In the orthodox view, they are simply functional or symbolic objects, repeated for symmetry. But outside academia, their meaning has become one of Gobecée's most compelling enigmas. These handbag shapes are not unique to this 12,000-year-old sanctuary. They appear almost identically in the reliefs of ancient Mesopotamia, where gods like Enki and Shamash are depicted holding a small rectangular satchel with a curved handle. Cross the oceans in your mind, and you find them again in the art of Thamek and the Maya, carried by strange, sometimes feathered beings. Now the big question is, can a motif appear in cultures separated by both vast oceans and thousands of years? The conventional answer is coincidence. Humans everywhere create containers, and it's only natural that they would sometimes look alike. Yet the precision of the resemblance, the ratio of the rectangle to its handle, and the uniform way it's depicted have led others to suspect a shared ancient origin. To alternative historians like Graham Hancock, these are not baskets or bags, but a symbolic language, a shorthand for something intangible, something carried not in leather or reed, but in the mind. They might represent the container of knowledge, the portable wisdom of the culture bringers, who, according to many indigenous myths, appeared after cataclysmic floods to rebuild civilization. The fact that there are 3 could be more than an artistic flourish. They may symbolize the 3 realms of ancient cosmology, heaven above earth in the middle, and the underworld below. Others see them as markers of astronomical cycles, 3 repeating ages in the great processional clock, or perhaps the 3 stars of Orion's belt, which seem to align with other features at Göbekli. If Göbekli Tepe builders encoded a message for the future, as our AI model suspects, the handbags may have been their way of saying that knowledge is portable, transferable, and essential for survival. In the last great catastrophe, they buried that knowledge, along with the site itself, locking away their warnings in stone. Although we cannot see what's inside, the repetition of this image, across continents and millennia, suggests that whatever it holds, it was considered vital. Then there's the deliberate burial of Gobecée, which adds another layer of mystery. The site was covered with soil around 8,000 BCE, intentionally, not by natural processes. This could have been an act of preservation, meant to safeguard the knowledge encoded in the pillars for a distant future generation. And as it turns out, we just might be the first generation in thousands of years to have decoded this life-altering information. What's even more interesting is that the AI's findings align with a growing body of research, suggesting that early human history may be more complex and more connected than previously believed. So while there's still a lot left to unpack about Göbekli, it's pretty obvious that it may not just be an archaeological site. It may be a message from a lost chapter of humanity's story. The cosmic clock. On the topic of lost chapters, let's dive into the AI's next discovery, which was perhaps the most controversial. The Gobekli's layout might encode a record of cosmic cycles. Gobekli Tepe turned out to be what you think it might have been, specifically a 25,920-year cycle tied to Earth's precession. In case you're unfamiliar with the term precession, is the slow wobble of Earth's rotational axis. Think of it like a spinning top that shifts over time. This wobble causes the position of the stars in our night sky to drift in a predictable pattern, completing one full rotation roughly every 25,920 years. It's a concept well known in astronomy today. But the idea that a Stone Age culture could measure such a vast cycle is to many scholars unthinkable. Yet according to the AI's analysis, the positioning of Göbeklit's main enclosures mirrors key points along this precessional path. Pillar alignments appear to point towards specific constellations as they would have risen or set thousands of years ago, not just in 9600 BCE, but across different epochs in the cycle. This suggests the builders weren't merely tracking the sky of their own time. They were recording an astronomical pattern unfolding over tens of thousands of years. The carvings themselves may reinforce this theory. The scorpion, Scorpius vulture, Sagittarius, and headless man imagery have been interpreted as a symbolic map of a catastrophic event tied to a precessional turning point. In other words, the symbols might not just be myth, they might be history encoded as art, warning of something that happened before and could happen again. The AI matched these symbols with other ancient traditions that reference a great year or vast cosmic cycle. The ancient Greeks, through Plato, spoke of the perfect year, the time it takes for the stars to return to their original positions. The Hindu concept of Yugas, the Mayan long count calendar, and even Egyptian star temples all hint at awareness of grand cosmic time. This cross-cultural recurrence raises the possibility that such knowledge was part of a shared inheritance from an earlier, unknown civilization. But why 25,920 years? The AI simulation suggested that this cycle might have been important not just for star mapping, but for tracking geological and climatic events. Here's why. Precession affects the timing of Earth's seasons relative to its position in orbit, which over long time scales can influence glaciations, droughts, and shifts in habitable zones. This ties directly into the Younger Dryas period, a sudden severe climate shift around 12,900 years ago, which some researchers link to a comet impact. If the people of Göbek or their predecessors experienced such a cataclysm, they may have encoded the cycle as a kind of doomsday clock, a warning to future generations about when similar conditions might return. The AI's projection placed the last completion of the cycle near the end of the last ice age, which quite align with the Younger Dryas disaster. That would mean we may now be approaching the end of another 25,920 years period. But don't panic yet, because mainstream archaeologists are understandably cautious. They argue that while ancient people were skilled observers of the sky, there's no direct evidence they could track precession over its full cycle. Because let's be real, this requires at least several centuries of continuous observation to even detect. However, proponents counter that such knowledge could have been inherited from an earlier culture that did have long-term astronomical records, perhaps preserved through oral tradition, monumental architecture, or symbolic art. One compelling piece of supporting evidence comes from the layout of the enclosures themselves. The AI's spatial analysis showed that the distances between certain pillars correspond to precessional numbers, multiples, and fractions of the cycle's 25,920-year length. For example, an angular offset between two main enclosures measured in the virtual model matched the shift in the position of the equinox over 2,160 years, which is 1,112th of the great year in the length of one astrological age in Western tradition. While it might come off as a coincidence, it's impossible to dismiss this precision as one. Instead, it implies that the builders of Gobecée weren't simply arranging stones. They were embedding a calendar that worked on the scale of millennia. Such a feat would require not only sophisticated sky watching, but also advanced mathematical concepts. If true, it reframes Göbekli not just as a temple or meeting place, but as a vast stone-built machine, a fusion of spiritual and scientific purpose. The ceremonies held there may have been part of a larger project, the preservation and transmission of cosmic knowledge. Still, critics of this theory warn against seeing patterns where none exist, a cognitive trap known as epiphania. They note that without written records, any interpretation of the site's symbols is inherently speculative. Yet, the AI's findings align with growing evidence that prehistoric cultures possessed far greater scientific and observational skills than previously assumed. Sites like Nabta Playa in Egypt and the megalithic temples of Malta also show possible precessional alignments, suggesting a broader prehistoric tradition. If Gobecée builders did indeed understand the Great Year, the implications extend far beyond archaeology. It would mean that our species once possessed and perhaps lost a deep time awareness of our planet's rhythms, one that modern civilization is only now beginning to rediscover. The idea that we might be approaching the end of another such cycle has stirred debate. Some see it as superstition dressed in pseudoscience, while others view it as a sober reminder that cosmic and climatic forces operate on scales much larger than a human lifetime. Whether or not catastrophe is imminent, the mere fact that such an idea might be encoded in a 12,000-year-old monument challenges the story we tell ourselves about the past. Still, we must be aware that the AI's reading of Göbekli is not a definitive answer, but an invitation to look deeper, to question how much of our history remains buried, and to consider the possibility that some of humanity's oldest monuments were not just built to honor the gods, but to speak across ages. And it is in this questioning that the AI's analysis takes an unexpected turn from the realm of ancient stone and myth into the language of quantum physics. Quantum echoes in stone. One of the most striking aspects of the AI's findings is its claim that the measurements, alignments, and patterns at Göbekli Tepe encode quantum-level information. This is a bold assertion. After all, quantum mechanics as we know it emerged in the 20th century. But the AI's analysis suggests that certain relationships between the pillars correspond to fundamental constants in physics. These pillars dates back 11,600 years. It appears to be purposely buried at the same time of the younger dest climate catastrophe. This is such as the Planck length and oscillation frequencies of subatomic particles. The quantum signature allegedly embedded in the stonework was not random. The AI noted that the distances between certain pillars, when converted into ratios, matched patterns found in quantum harmonic oscillation, a phenomenon where particles vibrate at discrete frequencies. These same ratios also appear in astronomical cycles, reinforcing the site's dual role as a celestial observatory and a symbolic archive. Skeptics argue that this might be a case of pattern projection, humans or AI finding familiar structures in unrelated data. But proponents counter that the precision of the alignments and the complexity of the patterns far exceed what would be expected from a purely symbolic or decorative design. The question becomes, how could a Neolithic society have encoded something akin to quantum principles into architecture? One possibility suggested by the AI is that Göbekli's builders inherited fragments of an older, more advanced tradition, knowledge passed down orally or symbolically from survivors of a lost civilization. This aligns with the hypothesis that Göbekli was constructed not by primitive hunter-gatherers inventing culture for the first time, but by people safeguarding remnants of a pre-key cataclysmic science. These connections also tie into the 25,920-year cycle, the length of the precession of the equinoxes. In physics terms, it's a macrocosmic oscillation, a long, slow wobble of Earth's axis that has climatic and environmental consequences. The AI's interpretation suggests that the builders might have understood this cycle not just in astronomical terms, but in a multi-scale framework where cosmic rhythms mirror atomic ones. The way a pendulum swings and a subatomic vibration are both forms of oscillation. The more you look at Göbekli, the harder it is to believe it's just a bunch of old stones. The site doesn't just follow the stars, it almost thinks like them. Its layout whispers of patterns that seem to link the tiniest building blocks of the universe with the vast movements of the cosmos. It's the same idea later echoed in the ancient phrase, "as above, so below." That what happens in the sky is mirrored in the smallest corners of reality. If this is true, then the builders weren't simply watching the heavens. They were mapping the deep code of existence itself. And that forces us to ask, were they recording knowledge they had just discovered or protecting wisdom from a forgotten age, hoping it would outlive them? The legacy uncovered. We've explored how a quantum AI might have decoded Göbekli's symbols as a calendar, as a cosmic warning, and even as a vessel for quantum knowledge. Go leap. Brother, if there is such a thing as an ancient conspiracy theory, it's this. Now it's time to ask, what does this legacy mean for us today? If the AI's interpretations hold even a grain of accuracy, then the builders were remarkably intentional, not merely creating ritual spaces, but constructing a profound archive of knowledge and cosmic awareness by sculpting pillars with calculated geometric layouts, embedding sequences that mirror lunar solar calendars and Earth's precessional cycle, and perhaps encoding quantum-like ratios. They weren't displaying artistry alone. They were kind of transmitting understanding. Don't believe us? Well, the deliberate burial of the site around 8000 BCE actually supports this view. If the carvings held dangerous or urgent information, warning of cycles, cosmic shifts, or environmental upheaval, burying the message may have been the best way to preserve it. Unlike other ancient monuments, Gobecée wasn't abandoned. It was sealed like a time capsule, waiting for a civilization capable of reading it to come along. The stakes are higher than archaeology or history. They're existential. If their encoded messages reference repeating cosmic cycles or environmental triggers, then the next phase might be looming on the horizon. Decades, not centuries, maybe even within our lifetimes. Importantly, the AI's findings, while speculative, aren't grounded in myth. They rely on geometry, pattern recognition, symbol sequencing, and models of astronomical and quantum data, combined with independent research about Gobekli Tepe's astronomical alignments, luni-solar calendar possibilities, and symbolic continuity across cultures. For example, the V-shaped carvings interpreted as calendar days. These claims form a compelling mosaic. This may not just be a monument to the past, but a message for our future. Think of it not as a fight between spirituality and skepticism, but as a responsibility. Because if an AI has unearthed a message from 12,000 years ago that may still matter today, do we ignore it, or do we examine it with all the rigor, curiosity, and care we can muster? The clock is ticking. If the AI's projections are even close to accurate, we stand on the edge of a pattern that may be far older than written history. A cosmic cycle that could peak within the next 2 decades. Whether this turning point brings catastrophe or transformation is a question we can't yet answer. But history and prehistory suggest one thing clearly. Those who recognize the signs didn't leave them to chance. The people of Gobekli, whoever they were, saw something worth carving into stone and aligning with the heavens. Gobecée was a game, sure, but I think it's a game changer for everything. Because Gobekli, they did not simply mark their seasons, they marked an epoch. And then at the height of their achievement, they buried it. Every pillar, every carving, every hint of meaning sealed away beneath tons of soil as if protecting their knowledge from the very future they were trying to warn. We've spoken about the possible disasters comet impact, climate shifts, and cosmic radiation. But there's another danger we haven't touched on. The danger of forgetting. Cycles are only useful if someone remembers them. Once a cycle is lost to memory, it becomes invisible until it strikes again. And by then, it's too late. Civilizations rise and fall, languages change, and records vanish. The moment we decide the warnings are just myths, the countdown resets in silence. Gobecée itself might be proof of that. Think about it. They could have left it in the open, a monument for all to see. Instead, they entombed it. Was that an act of preservation or an act of resignation? Did they hide their knowledge so the next civilization could rediscover it when the time came? Or did they realize that even warnings can be misread, misused, or ignored, and decide it was better for the stones to sleep until a generation with the means and the will could understand them? And here we are. We've unearthed their work. We've run it through computers, translated its symbols, and matched them to events in the distant past. We have the tools they never dreamed of. But we also have something they might have feared. A civilization more distracted than any that came before it. If the clock is really ticking, the challenge isn't just predicting the next peak in the cycle. It's deciding whether we'll carry that knowledge forward. And how will we build something to last 10,000 years? Will we encode it in a way no disaster can erase, or will we let it fade again, trusting that the survivors of the next reset will pick up the pieces and start over? The builders of Göbekli made their choice. They turned their eyes to the sky, carved their warnings, and buried them deep. Now the stones are speaking again. The question is not whether we can hear them. The question is, what will we do with what they're telling us? What are your thoughts on this? Tell us in the comments below. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to the channel so you can be notified whenever we upload a new video.